Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have someone that I met at the, where was it? It was the London Business School Young Presidents Organization. We were both speaking there. And I got to tell you, I felt like I met a kindred soul, and I just fell in love with Annie Särnblad. She is a preeminent global speaker and expert in reading facial expressions. So you can imagine we would have some stuff to talk about. She is certified in the facial action coding system, which is FACS, F-A-C-S, and can numerically code the 10,000 muscle combinations in human expression. So Annie is a microexpression expert and a human lie detector, among many other wonderful things. And you can find her at linkedin.com/in/Annie Särnblad. I'll spell that ANNIE-SARNBLAD. And Annie, welcome to Speak Like a Leader show.
Thanks, John. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I think I've been trying to make this happen for a long time. We just there was that thing called COVID that sort of interrupted.
Oh, Lord. Yes. We were on top of the world before that.
It was a great time. Boy,
it was a good time. It was a really fun time.
So Annie, I think one of the things that we have in common is our focus on like the neurobiology of communication.
Yes.
We focus on different aspects of it, but we have a lot of crossover. So tell us a little bit about you and what you do. And we've got a lot of people listening that are top level leaders, like the people that we were speaking to. We also have a lot of people that are, with startups and Series A, Series B. So I think that there's a huge amount of value that you bring to people in business just to even start to think about things from your point of view,
Yeah. So, one of the things that I love most about talking to you is that you always really, you sort of instantly get it, what I'm talking about. We're always on the same wavelength. And you talk a lot about how the emotional brain is responsible for so many of our decisions. You talk about the paleo-mammalian brain, which I brought into my own work. I sometimes paraphrase what you talked in your sessions when I saw you as a keynote. And I love that perspective because everything that I do is scientific. So if you look at body language, for example, that's vaguer. It's really important to learn, and it's important to study, and it's important to be aware of. But it changes from individual to individual, from culture to culture, even from family to family, right? Yeah. Even within the family, you could have a sibling that has completely different body language than another sibling. Microexpressions are universal.
Say that again. It's so important because I think a lot of the things that you and I are both focused on are this. What did you say? Yes. Say that again.
So microexpressions are universal. That means that they precede the thought process and they manifest on all of our faces in the same way. So the expression of sadness on one individual is the same as the expression of sadness in another individual.
And this is across cultures.
This is across cultures, ethnicities, ages, genders. Even people who are born blind make the same facial expressions to express the same emotions. So It has nothing to do with socialization. It's a biological thing. So when we humans are scared, our hands get all cold. Have you ever noticed that about when you're about to go up on stage, your hands get all kind of clammy and frozen?
Yep.
It's because the blood rushes down to our legs and our feet so that we can run.
Yeah.
So it's a biological response. It changes blood flow and muscle movement. Same thing when we get angry, the blood pumps into our arms and our fists so that we can fight, so we can protect ourselves. Human beings cry when we're sad. When we're nervous, we sweat. We sweat in specific areas of our body, in our armpits, sometimes on our forehead, palms of our hands. When we're sexually aroused, the blood pools in the middle of our body. We wouldn't be able to procreate if that weren't the case. And sometimes that's where all the men go, oh, right? Arousal leads to a specific physical response. It doesn't lead to tears.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or cold hands. And if it does, then maybe you need to talk to somebody about my hair. That's a different thing. But when
Right.
I use that as an example, people go, oh, no, that's true. Different emotions manifest in different places, and a change in blood flow and muscle movement in our bodies and on our faces. Every
Yeah.
facial expression is localized to specific areas of the face.
Yeah.
So the micro expressions are the little flicker of emotion that we previously thought human beings couldn't see, couldn't be aware of. And what we've found is that, especially in my work, I teach my students, you've heard me say this a million times, move your gaze. Stop looking me in the eye. Look me on the face, John.
Yeah.
So if I get you to switch your gaze from looking me in the eye to shift down to the bottom half of my face, right at that moment where you're going to see how I'm responding to your pitch or to your great idea, you'll know how I'm feeling about that. Because if I tighten my lips, I'm angry. Pucker my chin, I'm feeling vulnerable or sad. Do this half bottom lip pull, so I'm pulling the corner of my lip down to one shoulder. That's fear, or what I like to call the oh crap muscle.
Yeah.
Right? Or
Yeah.
I show the no face, which is the wrinkled, squishy face that kids go like, I don't like that. It
And
lifts
the
your upper
eyebrows
lip.
together. And
Right? It lifts your upper lip. It shows the nostril shadows on the sides of your nostril, which is the nasolabial furrow, and it wrinkles your nose. And basically it's the ew face. Ew, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So that's the big macro face that we make when we're little. We're trained out of the macros. So we're not trained into facial expressions. We're trained out of them. But the micro expression is still part of our wiring. And whenever we don't like something, we do what I call the no face, which is just that little lightning flicker of the skin that's parallel and slightly below the outside nostril. We usually only do it on one side when it's the micro. And it's just like a jolt of little lightning, almost like you stick a wire into the skin right outside one of my nostrils and it goes zzz,
Yeah.
zzz, right?
Yeah.
It's just a little flicker and you'll miss it if you're looking me in the eye. But if we're in a negotiation and I say, okay, so I think we should agree to $10 million and I see that flicker, I go, oh, we didn't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't show me exactly what the person is thinking. It just only shows me what they're feeling. I need to keep digging and asking more questions. But it allows me and my clients to pivot within the negotiation. So they're prepped for their pitch. They do all the magic that you talk about, which is making sure that we're tapping into that emotional brain. We're making sure that there's a connection between the two of us. And then we're laying out our pitch and we're watching how they respond to it. And then we are ready to pivot.
Yeah.
When we see something that's new information, we're ready to either increase our price, decrease our price, talk about something other than price, follow up with questions and say, is there anything you want to weigh in about this? Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest, so we talked about that's the no face. The biggest yes face is pupil dilation. Now, mind you, I teach this in when I teach love and dating as well as when I'm teaching negotiation.
Yeah.
Obviously, consent is a thing, so we want to ask for the yes, but we want to ask for the yes when we see the pupil dilation.
Right.
And that's arousal. That's need, want. It's just something that's so intoxicatingly delicious. So that could be money. It can be an opportunity. It can be sex. It can be I've been told over and over again by especially the YPOers that I work with, they go, every time somebody brings out a tray of chocolate, your pupils go, bing.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I would call the yes face. And I just did a session in Vegas for a group, and we talked about how to know when to stop talking and close the deal. And you can really, that's a wonderful time to close the deal if you're ready. When you see the other side's pupils dilate, and you know that it's basically like you've got them in the palm of your hands.
Yeah. Well, and that's a hard thing to teach people is to stop talking.
Oh yeah.
Right. So great
self-included.
to be able to look for a signal over there for when it is time to stop talking. And this is why they're called microexpressions, right? Because when we're little kids, we make the full expression, but we get trained out of that. We get this poker face, but we still can't help that flash of a moment
Yeah,
of
because it's like trying to stop yourself from sweating when you're really nervous.
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can change your thought process. If you're really good at that, you can say, I'm going to just pretend I'm on a calm beach in Acapulco and I'm
Right.
just going to try. If you're really good at that,
My
you can.
pupils dilated, by
Right,
the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, it sounds like heaven. But that's exactly right. You can change your thought process, but most of us aren't that great at changing our thought process. So the micro expression comes first, even when I am really, really, really well trained, as are my children. We can't stop ourselves from doing the micro expression. So if you ask me if I want to eat something really yucky, I'm gonna like even I said the word yucky, you saw the
Yeah.
flicker, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna say
Tell us about the disgust face, because there was I mean, I really want you to come train Johnny,
yeah.
because like there's some very practical real world use to this besides just the negotiating table. Tell us about the disgust face and that example that you talk about sometimes of the
Right.
value of having your kids trained in this.
Right, right. So my kids are trained to recognize predatory behavior. I was abused as a kid. It became very, very important that my children have a vocabulary to identify and to talk about people around them that are dangerous and to be very specific as to why they think that person is dangerous, because just saying I don't like this person, or this person is creepy, or I don't like the way they're talking to me, that's what I did, and it didn't help. So my obsession was with taking this field of coding and translating it so that I could teach my kids, because I couldn't teach them sort of the mathematical, the equations, or what we call action units in facial action
Right.
coding. Facial action coding is amazing, but it wasn't useful. It was useful to understand the science. It wasn't useful in terms of teaching. I needed to go back to how you teach a 4-year-old, or how you teach
Yeah.
somebody who's even younger. My youngest client is 3. And the younger they are, the easier it is, because up until about the age of 2, this is so innate.
Yeah.
We know it. This is our universal human language.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time with my kids, taking them out into Singapore, live narrating the world in Swedish, and live narrating human facial expressions. And we started to simplify and simplify and simplify, which is what people do with languages. And this is our language. And because there were 4 of us that spoke this language, we then sort of got this slang and shorthand. And that's the piece. Those are the pieces that I teach CEOs all over the world, and management teams, and children, to recognize predatory behavior. So the example that you're thinking about, I believe, is when I was standing in my kitchen and my 5-year-old Emma came home from school and was complaining about seeing her brother's kindergarten teacher's husband in the classroom. So she was in senior kindergarten and he was in junior kindergarten, and they were just down the hall from each other. And every time she would walk by her little brother's classroom, she would notice that the kindergarten teacher and the kindergarten teacher's husband were in the classroom. So she came home one day and she said, I doesn't like Mr. Barnard. And I said, my inclination was, I'm cooking, I'm tired, please be nice, stop whining, just leave me alone. But I taught her predatory behavior, and so I said, why don't you like Mr. Barnard? And she said, because he shows contempt and disgust when he talks to me. You can feel that in your solar plexus, right? In your nervous system when I do this facial expression. So I'm showing contempt and disgust. And what that looks like is a little bit of a lip curl. That's part of the contempt. And then together with the shadow right next to my outer nostril on one side, the same side that I'm curling my lip. It depends on the person which side they do it
It's
on.
kind of like a snarl.
It's a growl. Yeah, it's exactly a snarl. It's basically, this man was growling at my child like a dog. Nice to see you, Emma. And the problem with that is that the words and the facial expressions are a mismatch. So if somebody says, I hate broccoli, not a problem if they're growling. Oh boy, man, you really don't want to eat that broccoli. Not a problem, right? The words, you're saying a negative, but if you're saying it's nice to meet you, I'm excited to see you. I mean, you can feel it.
Yeah.
And people usually lean away from me when I demonstrate
Yeah.
that face.
Yeah.
And so I went into the head of school and said, first of all, why is this man in my child's classroom? And second of all, why is he exhibiting predatory behavior towards my daughter? And God bless him, he's a really, really good man. And he said, that's not good, Annie. I'm going to call the police now. And he called the Singaporean police, and the man was extradited. Mr. Barnard was extradited to Australia as a wanted man within 48 hours. God bless the Singaporean police and the head of school of the school,
That
because
is
they just got
awesome.
it done fast.
Because he had a record.
He had a record, and he had targeted this kindergarten teacher. They had met in Thailand. I think my understanding was about 3-4 years earlier. And he had targeted her because she had access to little boys. And he was growling at my daughter because he understood that she was identifying something. You know, that it's very dangerous with a predator when a predator starts to recognize that something's off with them. Yeah. And she was in the way of him getting access to my son and, her little brother and the other little boys.
Oof. Wow.
And I tell you, I swear I would have known when I was her age. Emma and I have the same just deep intuition, but when I sounded the alarms, nobody listened to me.
Right.
And that is really the basis of my obsession with this profession, was this wanting other people to have the tools to be able to identify dangerous behavior. So Johnny is what, 6 now?
He's 6, yeah.
He's 6. Yeah, that's a good age for it.
Yeah. Well, I think I would really like to do that. He's such a sweet, sweet kid. And
I've met him. I mean, I think he was 3 when I saw him in London.
Yeah.
Because he was with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they say, I love this saying, your superpower is almost always located right next to your scar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a very good friend who's a clinical psychologist, and we always talk about that. You just don't have the strength, the perseverance, the tenacity to go out and fight unless you've been wounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and all of us that have some kind of superpower have been wronged and have been hurt. I mean, I know I certainly have.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy obsession. My obsession is not, it doesn't come from a cheerful place.
Right. Well, but think of the difference that you're making. Look at the difference you made just right there.
I try.
I try. Difference, right?
And I know you try too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what are some, this takes some training, but what are some things that you could give to the people listening right now? Like, I think one thing is, yes, it's great to make that eye contact, and it's very important, and make sure that you're at crucial moments glancing down and seeing if you can pick anything up from people's kind of mouth and nose area, because that's where those things mostly show.
So,
right?
So the facial expressions are all over the face. What my kids and I have done is we've realized that you can look at all these pieces of the face. So, for example, joy. Genuine joy is called a Duchenne smile. Duchenne was a contemporary of Darwin, and they used to, I believe they used to send letters back and forth. And Darwin was obsessed with facial expressions. He wrote a book about the expressions of man and animals in, I believe it was 1872. And he started that, anyone who pays attention long enough and is in situation after situation that where they're looking at human faces, especially without language, will start to notice this, because our brains already know it. The reason I can teach it is because we know it. Yeah. So my kids and I went out into the world and started simplifying it. To give you some background, I lived for about 25 years. I lived abroad. I've lived in 9 countries altogether. I've studied about 8 languages through immersion, mostly through immersion. And so I spent years and years of my life really not having a freaking clue as to what people are saying. So that's one of the reasons I'm so good at it, and I can dissect it. And so when I did the coding, I go, oh yeah, I know that face. I know that face too. Okay. So I took my kids out into the world. We're speaking Swedish, and finally Emma looks at me. I think she was about 4, and she goes, Mama, you don't have to look at all those different pieces of the face to see if someone's happy or not. Just look right under the eyes. If it's fat there, then they're happy. I was like, what? I mean, out of the mouths of babes. So you can study it on a very scientific level, but because with happiness, our cheeks lose gravity. Doesn't really have anything necessarily to do with the mouth. Our cheeks pop up. They get happy, they pop up, and then the skin right under the eyelids, where we talk about we have circles under our eyes, that skin.
Right. Yeah.
That skin has nowhere to go, so it pops out, it sticks out, it bulges. And those are, you can see it on my face, and it creates like half crescent moon shadows on the sides. And if you just look there, you can see the difference between a real smile, this is a real smile, or a fake smile. And you see the skin stays flat.
Yeah.
And once you see that and start recognizing it, you can't believe, like, how did I miss that my entire life? I've been looking at faces. So that's,
so once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I've really messed you up for the remainder of your life.
It's great. It's, yeah, I think it's good.
So that's a good one. The cheeks popping up in joy.
Yeah, well, you know what it does? It takes a lot of the fun out of looking at celebrity photos.
Right. Well,
Right?
I mean, right. Okay, so watch. This is something that's really interesting. So a lot of celebrities have been photographed while they're showing disgust, because you can imagine how invasive it is to have somebody you put their camera in your face all the time when you really don't want to. So it only takes 1 or 2 or 3 pictures for Julia Roberts or whoever it is, Selena Gomez, whoever it is. That's making that face to realize I don't want another picture of myself going like this. So they try to cover it with a smile. You see how that is? But right? And that it looks almost sinister. But what happens is you can see the disgust even in that smile because you look at those shadows right next to the nostrils.
Right. So the lips are smiling, but
but
the nose is showing disgust, and that's pulling the cheeks down. So there's not that fat and happy cheek.
Yes. And you would be able to say, this looks off. So the piece of your work that I love the most, surprise, surprise, it hits my ego right where I like it, is that piece where you're talking about the paleo-mammalian brain.
Yeah.
And so our brain registers all of these things. And you talk about this a lot. Our brain, our subconscious knows this. Even if we can't dissect it and even if we can't put names on it. Just like when I was a little girl, I'd say, this man is creepy. I could see that something was off and something was wrong. I just never been given a vocabulary to talk about it. And that's what I do for my students is I give them the vocabulary. I teach them where to look. I teach them what it's called. And then they go, oh my God, this person's not happy. Look at the nostril shadows.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no smile bags under the eyes. Where are the smile bags? They're not happy. The skin's flat. There are no smile bags. So all of a sudden it creates this flow between your subconscious and your conscious brain. Or your unconscious. I always get them mixed up. I'm super dyslexic. So I use all the words, and I speak too many languages, so I use all the words all together like spaghetti. But anyway, it creates this flow where when you get your gut feeling reinforced, you go, oh my God, my gut was right. There it is.
Yes.
That's what I was feeling it, and I see it. It's off. This person is not happy. Or I see it. This person is saying the disgust is what I call the no face. This person's saying no, even though their words are saying yes. I'll bet this person won't actually do what they say they're going to do. Yeah. And they didn't. See, I was right again. I was right again, and I knew it, and I saw it, and I named it. And there you go. I can see it.
Well, so and what I talk about a lot is how our our ancient paleo mammalian brain, it doesn't have access to language or logic or reason.
Correct.
But it does have access to reality on a much deeper level than we will ever have access consciously, right? Yes. It smells pheromones. It sees facial microexpressions. It sees all this complex body language that we don't consciously process. But that's what I love about what you do is you can lift some of this stuff up that was previously totally unconscious, but that we're seeing. We definitely are always seeing it. And that's why we get that gut feeling. That's where it comes from. It can't talk to us with language, but our ancient brain talks to us with feelings. But what's really cool about your process is you can now lift that from being a totally unconscious thing into the level of consciousness, which is so fascinating and so powerful, right?
Well, what I talk about when I talk about my kids is so the interesting thing is that babies will scan your face. They'll do this tick, 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 right? And the only time
Yeah.
grown-ups will do that is that when we're about to kiss somebody, especially when we're about to kiss somebody for the first time. And we just do this because our brain reverts to this really primitive state where, am I going to get rejected? Am I going to get rejected? Am I going to get rejected? And I call that scanning the face. And I realize that I do that. We women do that when our babies are born. We actually scan the whole body. 10 fingers, 10 toes. Is everything okay? Are they breathing right? Are they the right color? And I do it when I haven't seen a loved one in a very long time, or when I've had extra worry for whatever reason about my children. And they see it on me instantly. And they go, Mom, stop it. I'm fine. I'm fine. But I like to think that with my children, because I started training them when they were pre-verbal. Now, I wasn't as good at the facial expressions at that age, but I did start the training, and I knew some of it. And I like to think that their unconscious and their conscious brain were never fully separated and disconnected, because they were constantly strengthened. We do know that children of alcoholics, children of abuse, and certain other professions, Secret Service members for whatever reason, seem to be able to code microexpressions even if they haven't learned the lingo.
Yeah.
And we think it's because when it's a question of survival, we don't have the luxury of turning off that skill.
Right.
But we still don't necessarily have a vocabulary for it. I mean, I don't really know what the Secret Service people are trained to do, but I know that they've been able to establish that people who are in fields where they're extraordinarily good at self-preservation or the protection of others tend to have an almost, what we would call almost supernatural ability to be able to, and it's not, it's the most natural thing on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's that they had to, when it's a matter of survival, it just gets reinforced.
Right.
It just gets reinforced.
Yeah, and so I think for my kids, it was never disconnected. So I do, when I work with really high profile families, which I do, I have some clients who are very well known and where their wealth is well known.
Yeah.
And so they have additional security issues and risks. I work with those families, and the younger I can start working with their children, the better.
Yeah.
Because I have one little client, and I'll show her, I have to work with the parents and the kids at the same time, because they have to understand, if the child says he's showing contempt and disgust, or this person showed fear when they shouldn't have been showing fear, the parents need to understand exactly what that looks like and what that indicates. And they have to have a shared vocabulary. So I never train kids without training the parents at the same time.
Yeah.
But I'll work with the parents, and we'll do repetition, and then finally get to the point where we're watching videos and you see a little micro expression. That's where I like to end up, where they can see the micro expression and not miss it.
Yeah.
And so I'll work with the parents, put in a tremendous amount of work. Then I'll work with the kids, and I'll say, do you see this? Now make that face in the mirror. And they go, yeah, okay. And they do it spot on.
Yeah.
And I say, well, do you know what this, this means that they don't like this. And they just look at me and they go, well, yeah, it's basically the duh.
Yeah, right.
How can you not see that? Her chin is puckered. She's sad. Look at the little chin. I like to say we take the grape that is our chin and we turn it into a raisin when we're sad or vulnerable. Right? And you can feel it start sending all these signals to your brain.
Yeah. Well, that's the other interesting thing about these expressions is it's a two-way street, right?
Yes.
When I make that sad face, I start to feel sad. And when I make that disgust face, I start to feel disgust.
Yes, it's the wiring of our brain that it takes the message that our facial expression makes and it sends it to the amygdala, and that's how we process emotion. So when that's interrupted, that process with too much Botox or facial paralysis, we lose our ability to empathize. We lose our emotional intelligence.
That's so crazy.
And horrifying, because you think of somebody who gets ill at later stages of their lives, and it's such a piece of our personality and our connection to other people to be able to interpret their emotional situation and their feelings. And that's why when we're face to face, we mirror each other, or we mirror our micro expressions of the person we're talking to. So if I'm talking to someone who's deeply depressed, I'm going to feel really exhausted afterwards. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
smell and body language and all
Yeah.
sorts. We know that there's changes in the voice
Yeah.
and even in the vocabulary, the choice of words.
Yeah,
But the
all
facial
that
expressions
stuff.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the exercises that I have with people is acknowledging what I call the monkey mind and all those negative thoughts that are going
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
and then get those thoughts in the back seat,
Right.
and then get yourself aligned with your message, right? What is it that you actually want to have in the driver's seat?
Yes.
And when people do that, then their facial microexpressions and all this stuff that's very unconscious,
Yeah.
it's one of the only accesses, it's the only access I really know of to getting some sort of a handle on that, is getting that monkey mind in the back seat and then creating what's going to go in the front seat, and then practicing staying in what you created, because that's going to really influence all those totally unconscious messages we send. I had a guest on named Fiona Murden, and if you haven't met her, you guys should just meet. I should make the introduction. But Fiona wrote a book called Mirror, about mirror neurons. I think it's called,
Yeah. Yep.
Mirror
Yep, those
thinking.
it's phenomenal. Yep.
And we were talking about how most people who study consciousness and study the brain think that 10%, 5%, maybe as little as 2% of what's going on is conscious.
Yeah.
All the rest of that is under the covers of it's unconscious. And
Yeah.
so to be bringing some of this above the fold and getting
Right.
us conscious of this stuff, I think is it's very powerful.
Well, and it makes so there's a couple points, and let's see if I remember them all. But one is that we can't change our microexpressions express what we're feeling, and there's this loop of the more we make the micro. I mean, I can make the microexpressions and force myself to feel things, and I can come back to that in a second. But we need the microexpressions to be able to feel emotion. Once there's too much frozen, it's one of the reasons that Botox helps with depression, because we stop our thinking muscles from between our eyebrows from working, and it stops us from worrying to a certain degree.
That's so interesting.
It is so interesting.
Yeah.
So there's times when, for example, one is that mood and facial expressions is very contagious. So if I'm spending a bunch of time with somebody who's showing distress over and over again, which has got a piece of fear, which is the lower rectangularing of the mouth, right? And
Kind of
the
pulling
pucker
back.
of the chin. So you've got this, it's almost like, ugh. And it really, it hits our nervous system. I find that spending too much time with someone with depression, it's contagious. So
Yeah.
I had a friend that for a while really needed a lot of attention, and I would see her in person sometimes, but I would also, when I was overwhelmed myself with kids and work, I would talk to her on the phone, because then even though I would make some of the facial expressions myself, not having her right in front of me to mirror, because her poor little chin was puckering. I'd come home and my chin would hurt.
Oh.
And I'm sure it did before I worked with microexpressions. I probably just didn't notice it. But I would feel that like muscle fatigue in my chin.
Yeah.
So we can't change the microexpressions that we're leaking, but we can change our thought pattern. So that's when you talk about do you call it the monkey brain?
The monkey mind, yeah.
The monkey mind. You unpacking and putting that away and focusing on the here and now. Yes, then your microexpressions change with your thought patterns.
And so does your vocal inflection and even your word choice. Like, it's staggering how much of an impact that has. And, I always ask people now, what's going to go better? The monkey mind speaker talking to the monkey mind audience, or the created speaker talking to the created audience? And there's never even a comparison.
No, and you have to. I mean, it's one of the reasons that you and I both talk about opening our frame when we're presenting, which is really funny, because I've been giving advice on presentations for the bulk of my career, not because it's actually my profession, but just because I can't help myself. But the other day I started a talk with my hands behind my back, and I thought, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are worried. What is she doing back
Yeah,
there?
what is
Like,
she doing?
she
And
she
also,
getting
and
a
then it
rocket?
was really interesting because it turned out I was actually mirroring my slide behind me. That because the kids were doing this like superhero
Ah,
pose with the arms
right.
out, and
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
was mirroring, like subconsciously, I was just mirroring the slide behind me, and I thought, what am I? This is so strange. As soon as
It's
I flipped the
interesting.
slide, I was fine.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, it
Yeah,
is,
it's contagious. It's all contagious.
yeah. And well, I mean, and that's the other thing, right? It's super contagious, and that works both ways.
Yes.
That's one of the things I think is super important as a leader, is getting how powerful mirror neurons are, and then maintaining the good instead of mirroring
Modeling,
into the bad, right? Like
modeling. So you start the snowball moving in the right direction, picking
yeah,
up momentum.
bring them
Yeah.
up, make them mirror up to something good that you're giving out versus falling into some negative mirroring that that
Well,
pulls you down, right?
It's why I use humor so much. Part of that is just that anybody who's been through trauma, it tends to be really funny.
Yeah.
Not always, but I mean, they do. There is something that I really enjoy about the humor of people that have withstood trauma and hard times. There tends to be just an additional layer of funny, and I think making people laugh is kind of loving them from the inside out.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, right. We just all need this relief because life is hard for everybody. And I think there's this misunderstanding that with privilege and power, everything becomes easy. And certainly it doesn't. There's certain pieces that are so essential for feeling safe, which is being able to pay your bills and having financial security. That I don't want to minimize that at all. That's extraordinarily important. Yep. But I do have a lot of clients that I work with that have extraordinary wealth and also extraordinary loneliness and isolation from, and a certain amount of paranoia sometimes too. Yeah.
Well, yeah, grass is greener over there. It always seems like till you get there, right?
Well, yeah, and again, it's how lovely not to have to worry about paying your bills or if your kid gets sick or that kind of thing.
Sure.
That's not to be minimized, but I think that you and I both know, having worked with so many CEOs and managing directors across the world, that it's when you're at the top of the pyramid, you can't tell your bored that you don't know what you're doing in certain circumstances. This idea of pretending that you know what you're doing in every aspect. No humans know what we're doing in all parts of our lives. And they're usually working so hard, there's some disconnection from the spouse, which is so central to happiness.
Yeah.
You can't tell your employees, hey, I don't know. I mean, the Swedes will, but most CEOs won't say, I have no idea what I'm doing with this part. And you don't really have any colleagues. That's why an organization like YPO serves this huge purpose of having a place where people can confide in each other and talk about business problems. But you and I both know as advisors that we hear things that other people aren't privy to. And when you hear the real issues, then you can start to do something about it. Then you can start to help.
Well, and that's the one of the things that I've come away with from the 2 decades of coaching that I've been really involved in so far, is just how utterly human every single human is. You know?
We're all a mess.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
We're all this leaky, and I talk about humans being just such a leaky, flawed mess of a thing. Just we're just, that's the way we all are. And I'm so beyond touched that about the level of struggle that I see on everyone's faces nowadays. And it doesn't, I don't differentiate. I mean, I see it as much in people with power as people with no power. There's just a lot of distress.
That is, let's talk about that a little bit, because this seems like about the most distressing time that I've been conscious for,
Yes.
Like I know that the late 60s was a very difficult time, but I wasn't really super aware of what was going on at that
Right.
point. But man, since I have become aware,
Yeah.
this seems like about the most difficult time that I can
Well,
remember.
certainly in our society. So I mean, again, I've lived in places where there's been extreme poverty,
Yeah.
and that amount of distress is different.
Yeah.
But in terms of being in the U.S. and just traveling around you, and I both travel a lot for work. I have people ask me all the time, what do? You must get so overloaded. The first question they ask is, do you ever turn it off? And the answer is no, not any more than I can turn off my English. If somebody behind me is speaking, I'm not really listening, but I still hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Right?
That's a
So
good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't turn off recognizing what's on other people's faces, and I don't turn off the sheer recognition every second of every day of what my own facial expressions are doing, because I can feel each and every one of them.
Yeah.
And
so what are you
I'm
seeing as you're walking around out there?
I take off my glasses.
Yeah.
I
don't want to see it.
Especially in airports. I'm traveling again tomorrow, and I'm going to get to the airport, and I'll have my glasses available. I carry them, usually on a string, and so I need them to be able to see which gate I'm going to, and where I'm going, and then I just pop them off, because what I'm seeing is this. Do you want to describe that?
That it's like the puckering of the chin, like maybe turning that grape into a raisin down there.
Yeah, there you go.
So like sadness and
that
maybe
sadness, vulnerability, it's in distress, and it basically it's struggle. I'm not doing okay. I'm not doing okay. And so what I see, if I had to put thought bubbles, or what I call feeling bubbles, to a facial expression, which is one of the techniques I use when I'm teaching facial expressions, is what would you imagine this person's feeling? Because that's kicking in that unconscious brain, and you and I talking about, they kind of know anyway. When we see the big facial expression, we kind of know that this person's not okay, even if we're not dissecting the facial expression. So that pucker of the chin, when I see that over and over again in person after person after person at the airport, is, I'm barely holding it together. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be fine. You hear that tightness in the throat, where in Sweden we call it when your breath is in your throat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's like that almost
shallow breathing and high.
Exactly. Yeah, very, very high up. We say, don't arrive with your breath in your throat. Like that, just kind of that really shallow breathing. But that's what it feels like on the face is, oh, honey, oh, no, are you okay? And what about you? Are you all right? No, you're not doing okay. Do you need a hug? Okay, you need a hug. And I can't go up to these strangers and be like, oh, sweetie. But it puts me very much in this maternal position, almost like, when Johnny was 3 and something would go wrong. That's where you'd see it on the face first.
Yeah.
The pucker of the chin, and it pushes the lower lip up, and then we would say with Leah, our oldest, we'd say, "Oh, here comes the lip! Here comes the lip!"
Right.
And the lip would fold over, and then you'd hear,
"Whoa!" Yeah. Well, that might be why travel seems so hard for me, because I couldn't figure out why, like, coming back, it's been so much harder. Because I still carry my suitcase to the airport and get on the plane and sit down and stuff,
right?
But I think I'm noticing this, unconsciously noticing all these expressions that you consciously notice, and it kind of just makes it a little harder.
And so now you can go out into the airport and you can start saying, there's the chin, there's the chin, there's the chin. Yeah. It's fun for me in some ways, because next time you fly, you'll be doing homework for me.
Yeah, right.
And then you can text me and you can say, Annie, I saw 45 chins quiver.
Yeah.
And I'll go, oh, honey. But it's easier for me when I can see it, because it was there anyway, and my brain knew it was there anyway. And so when I can see it and identify it and put words to it, it's almost like therapy. Yeah, I'm not crazy.
I get that. Yeah. Well, so Annie, I know we're coming up on our time. Is there anything I didn't ask you about, or anything that you would like to say? We still have a couple minutes.
I would say, I would just, if I were going to wrap up, I'd say just be kind to everybody around you, because everybody is just having such a hard time. And if we treat everybody, honestly, I treat most people like they're 4-year-olds in big bodies, myself included.
Yeah.
I think we end up getting along better. That
Yeah.
we're all just barely holding it together these days. And if we can just be kind, that's really helpful. And start paying attention. Start recognizing the patterns on people's faces, because we have these patterns of expressions and they are universal. They're on everybody's face. And if we change where we look on their face and we lower it, we could look up. There's a lot of stuff on the forehead. I just find it easier to do on them. Let me go through a couple facial expressions quickly for those people who want to see the video.
Yeah, we'll put this video up, and we'll put some of the video into our social media. If you're listening, we'll do our best to get this to you.
And this will be an extra little thing. Ready? Okay. Anger,
yeah.
Sadness, contempt, disgust, right? Fear. And then joy is just that rising. You see the cheeks. Whoops. Sorry.
That's
the
all
cheeks
right.
rising up. And that
That's
skin
awesome.
gets fat. So yeah, those are just a couple of things to work on.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll put that clip out. That's really cool. And then watch for that. And hopefully you'll see more pupil dilation than you will like disgust or contempt.
No, you're gonna see more disgust. Sorry about that. But the pupil dilation is so magnificent, and it works in dating too. For those of you who are younger and looking for a partner, if you see that pupil dilation, they're really into you. But you're gonna want to see the chin pucker, because that's emotional attachment.
Yeah.
Anytime you talk about something that's hard or difficult for you, that person should be mirroring your facial expression with their chin if they care about you.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, that's great. Gosh, so fabulous to talk with you, Annie. It's always
So
such
fun.
a pleasure. And people can find you at LinkedIn /in/Annie Särnblad, which is ANNIE-SARNBLAD. We'll put all this in the show notes. We'll get the video clip of that last little bit out for sure too.
Great.
And I'm just glad to know you're in the world, and thanks for what you do. And I'll look forward to, hopefully our paths will cross again in person here sometime soon too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Annie. And thank you for listening. If you like speaklikealeader.show, we would appreciate if you'd give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about us. And if you've got any suggestions or comments or things that you think we could do better or things you think we could do more, email me, john@johnbates.com. I will get that email and I will take whatever you say into account. And again, Annie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time on speaklikealeader.show. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.